all you guys have to do right now, the software is live. I've navigated to the Town of Windsor's Economic Development website. I'll start navigating around, and it looks like small and medium business insight tool would be something that would be intuitive to me if I were a small or medium business. It looks like we have found SizeUp Economic Development, and then I'm going to go ahead and click here, and then we are at the tool. So it's as simple as that. It's as simple as going to the website and navigating to the tool. So we try and make this as simple as possible. So just to get started, all you need to know is the industry you're looking in and the location. So it is the morning. I sometimes need a little bit of coffee to wake up. So we're going to go ahead and go with coffee as an example. So we're going to go with coffee shops, and then we're going to go ahead and go with Windsor. We're going to click next. And what you'll see is, as Mario described, the 4 different specific modules that covers their individual analysis. We're going to take you through all of these, but we're going to go ahead and start with the first one here. Once you guys become pros, you guys can navigate to anyone that you want at any time. So we're going to go to measure your business performance here. And here we are. You'll be able to see a lot of the benchmarks for certain categories. So right here, if you ever want to, as Mario described earlier, you can change the industry that you wanted. So here is where we can do all the way from restaurants to pizza to Italian. So we can search any of these particular industries by changing it right here. And then we can go ahead and see how we stack up against our competitors in our industry. So does anybody want to shout out what they think the average coffee shop makes in Windsor? And it's okay, that pause right there is absolutely normal. A lot of businesses, before they get started, they don't know what it is going into it. And that's where we're here to provide you value. So I'm going to go ahead and guess in about $1 million. Then you see that the map will populate and all the information here will show up. You can see that in Windsor, it's just actually a little over $1 million. So it was pretty close here. And then we can see this by county, Weld County, neighboring Larimar, and then even the metro all the way up to the nation. Then we also have a heat map over here because we know that not every area is created the same, and we can see the variability across spatially across your area. Now, I want you to keep in mind that this is revenue. This is not profit. So while revenue may be higher in certain areas, profit could potentially be the same. So you can use this in multiple ways. You can see where the revenue is, or the higher revenue generated by your average business. You can use this as a research tool, go to those areas and see maybe why those areas are making higher revenue than others, or you can use it for an advertising campaign. Moving on to the next benchmark, we have years started. So this is going to show you how many businesses in your industry opened in a given year. And we do this on every scale. If the nation is too high, or even the state is too high, we can just simply click it off, and then we can see how many coffee shops have opened up in a given industry. What's powerful about this is we can see the trends. If the trends are generally going up, then we know that there is potentially a market for it. Just like Mario was describing, unless you're doing something like the red box video, you might see this trend go down. Moving on to the next benchmark, salary. So business owners want to pay their employees a fair wage, but they also don't want to break the bank. So this is one of the reasons why some of those businesses fail, because they don't always know what to pay or what is fair. So I'm going to go ahead and input 20,000, and it looks like we are pretty close on the mark. Again, there is some variability. spatially. But we know that we are paying a fair wage, an industry standard wage, and we can see that across spatially. Moving on to the next one. This is another important factor for young, small businesses, the number of employees. Maybe I think that I can do this with very few employees, or maybe I think that I'm going to need a lot of help. This is going to be number of full-time equivalent employees. So this is going to be a blended average of all your baristas, your cashiers, your managers, etc. So I think that I'm going to need 20 employees. And as a small business owner, I am actually a larger small coffee shop comparatively to the rest of Windsor. And you can see where it varies across the map. So this plays a very important part, especially in our next benchmark going down over here, cost effectiveness. This metric is based on all the previous inputs that we put in prior to this. So the revenue that we inputted, how much we're paying our employees, and the number of our employees. So as you can see, based on the inputs that I put in, my cost effectiveness is stacking a little bit lower than everybody else. And we put in that we were pretty close as far as revenue as the average business. We were pretty close as far as the salary. However, where we wrapped up less points was where we put in more employees. So that's something to think about as a young entrepreneur or small, medium-sized business. Moving on to the next benchmark or KPI, key performance indicator, whichever lingo you prefer. It's great to see the data in multiple different ways. So here we display it in revenue per capita, so you can see the quality of those dollars by zip code, or you can see total revenue by zip code. So this is no longer the average. This is how much everybody is making, all the businesses combined their revenue within a given zip code. Moving on to the next benchmark, local turnover. So we had 20 employees when we're starting our business. Turnover is a huge deal, right? We want to retain as many workers as possible. Let's say I start my business, I'm losing one person. Okay, no big deal. Two person, oh no, this is becoming a trend. And then we retain all of our employees at that point. Then we can look at this and say, wow, the industry standard is actually 20%. I've only lost 10%. I must be doing something exceptional. On the reverse, if we go past that number, then we can say, well, my turnover rate is a little bit higher. Maybe something needs to change. Maybe you need to pay the employee a little bit more. Maybe you need to hire a little bit less workers. However, you need to make the adjustment. You have the objective lenses of data at your disposal. Moving on to the next one, we have two more benchmarks, healthcare costs and workers' comp. Traditionally, these have been hidden from small businesses. And here you can compare this, what you're paying and what the average is for the state. So now that we've done all that, now what? We can go ahead and click this summary view here, and we can get essentially a health dashboard of all the inputs that we've entered in. And you don't need a degree in data analytics to see that red is less and green is more. As you can see, we did this probably in about 7 minutes or less. You should be able to do this a lot quicker without all of the explanation on your own. And the reason why that's important, you guys are running a business, you don't want to have to spend a lot of time doing other things. However, you can get quick analysis at your disposal. You can also click this PDF button here. It will generate a report showing all of the things that we just inputted in much more detail. So what you can do with that is you can put that as part of your business plan. You could take this for a bank loan, potentially use this as part of an application for an incentive program if one is particularly out there. And one other thing, we entered all this, we know where we stand. I do want to point out that our data here is up, and Mario will get into this later on, but it's very important to bring this part up now. This data is updated every 3 months in this particular module. So you want to come back here, see the trends, see how they've changed, and see if you are moving up with the trend or down with the trend or however. And that was the first module. Before I move on, pass this on to Mario and open up this to questions, one last thing that I want to point out is we do have this I button here for information on every module. So if you forget what these modules do or how to use them, you can simply click this and there will be a 1-minute video or less that explains exactly how to use the module. So with that, Terry, are we saving questions till the end, or are we doing this at the end of each module?
I'd say at the end.
Okay, well then, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and pass this on to Mario. Mario?
Yep. Armando, if you want to stop sharing, I'll be able to. There we go. Perfect. So I'm going to pick up right where Armando left off, which was he was doing benchmarking for a coffee shop. And we're going to take you over to the next module, which is competition. Now, I do want to show you something really briefly on the competition tool, which is an information overlay, but I'm not going to spend that much time on it because you actually have even more detailed maps when you get to the demographic module. But let's say that I was a coffee shop. Oh, it's hypothetical, were a coffee shop, then I'd probably want to know what people are spending on different types of food. So you can see that we can come here and we can look at this heat map, and we can look at food and beverages. And we can, again, just like we looked at, say, restaurants and then pizza, Italian restaurants, whatever level you want to look at it, we can do the same thing here with food. We can look at food away from home. And then, you know, for a cafe, we could look at breakfast and brunch. If we're just doing snacks and non-alcoholic beverages, we can zoom in there and get the information. And you'll see the chart there that shows what the average revenue is, or I'm sorry, the total revenue, and then the aggregate spending by household. So you can toggle between these. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because, as you will see in our demographic module, you can get even more detailed information for that there. So I want to talk about how we can use this tool. Certainly you can use this for, you know, a retail business, but our tool is not focused on nor limited to retail businesses. I think a more classic use of this tool is to understand the ecosystem in which your business is operating. I heard some people talking about construction. So imagine, if you will, that I am in construction and I want to identify my competitors, where they are, where the concentration of that is. So I just pulled up carpenters and I can see here's LA Woodworks, here's a website. So I could click on that and then find out more information about that particular business and what they do. And I might be a carpenter who is working on, you know, smaller projects. Let's say I have a 5-person crew. So I'm not ready to work for the KB Homes, Lennar, Cal Atlantic home builders, but I'm working on smaller ones. So I might want to look at single family home builders. And then I can see all of the businesses that are working in single family, you know, home construction. I could even see that there's capital construction if I'm prospecting, and I want to see what type of projects they do. Is it a fit for the type of carpentry work I do? I can see their information. I can give them a call. I can see how long they've been in business. If they have social media, I could even click on it and I can see apparently they're traveling in Italy with their water bottle promoting their business. But I can also see that when they're not traveling in Italy, they're also doing remodels here. So I can find out more about that business. But that's only part of what I'm dealing with, right? Because I'm looking at my competitors and I'm looking at, I could use this as a prospecting tool to find other businesses that I want to sell my services to. But I also may need to know my supply chain. So if I'm working on smaller projects, you know, maybe hardware stores are just fine. And I can see that there's a local hardware store here. Or, you know, maybe I have to look at some of the big box stores. If I start working on bigger projects, as I mentioned, you can define what your supply chain is. So let's say you're working on really big projects where they need specialized type of materials. So instead of looking just at, you know, general hardware stores, we could actually say, hey, I really need to know where the lumber wholesalers are. And there we can see that there's Universal Forest Products, there's Sears, Trostel Lumber, and Millwork. So if I need something like really custom made, you can identify where things are. And as I mentioned before, you're not restricted to your local area if you need to look, further out. So let's say that there's some famous Montana, pine that you need to know about. You can go ahead and move the map up to Montana, click on those blue dots there, and then find out if that particular timber company harvests that particular pine tree from Montana that you need for your client's project. So while the analysis always starts in Windsor, it can extend to whatever that area is. And as Armando mentioned, we can always export that to PDF. We click the button and we'll get that report of our competitors, our prospects, our existing customers, supply chain, whatever it may be. So this is the competition tool. It allows you to understand the ecosystem in which you're operating, whether it's local businesses or distant suppliers that you need to power your business's success. And you can dive in as deeply as you want to individual businesses and their social media profile, or of course, you can just look at a national perspective, whatever suits your particular business. So that's the competition tool. Since we're going to save questions for the end, I'm going to go ahead and move to the advertising module at this time. So advertising module is a really valuable tool, and it can work lots of different ways. It just depends on your particular business case or use case for how you want to use it. So this is the, what's his name? Tom Cruise, the Show Me the Money guy, Jerry Maguire, way of thinking about advertising. These are the zip codes where more money is spent on carpenters than any other place in the area. I'm going to actually take you to a different category, professional services. So we see that a lot of professional services, dentists, attorneys, accountants, they tend to advertise. So this is a more concrete thing for me. I have two daughters, 10 and 5. They hated going to the dentist, but we found a family dentist that has a unique value proposition. And so I will talk you through how my dentist told me he uses the tool. So this is total revenue. Now he has a unique value proposition. He's a family dentist. He puts TV screens on the ceiling with wireless headphones. So the kids can just watch My Little Pony or whatever, and he uses nitrous. So he thinks that people will come from further around for his services because he has a unique value proposition. So he actually analyzed this on 25 miles. But he was just coming out of dental school with a new idea about how he wanted to run. So he didn't want to just go to where the most money is, right? And we can look here, we can see that those are the zip codes where the most money is. He actually wanted to look at underserved markets. So here are your underserved markets, but he's also a dentist. So he wants to focus on some specific things. So I don't know about you, I don't have the budget to market for 20 different zip codes. That's a lot. So let's focus on some things. One, you're a dentist. So let's make sure that you're old enough to have teeth, not so old you started losing them. And why don't we boost up that household income? Because let's say that my value proposition is really high. So if you don't want your daughters crying or anything else, you may be looking at minimum household incomes of $100,000. Now I'm just making this up. But what we can see now is we're looking at areas that you might want to consider marketing at because these areas are underserved. People in these areas are spending more money, but they're not spending it locally. They're going someplace else. So you already know that these are people that would go to your location for your services. So here's Johnstown, Timnath, Windsor, and Fort Collins. So that's the way that he thought about his particular business. And so you can, again, export this to PDF. If you're working with a third-party advertising, you can do that. If you want to be a little bit less restrictive, you can always adjust these and then see more that matches your budget. But what it is telling you is this is where you want to focus because of your unique demographic characteristics that you're looking for, your advertising. Now, where you advertise is a different question. It might be on Facebook, it might be on LinkedIn. It depends on the industry that you're in. And so let me show you that. Let me reset this filter. Let's go back to that single family home construction business. As I said before, if I'm a smaller crew, I might not have the money to work with those really large home builders. So what I might be trying to identify is not looking at average revenue or total revenue, because that can be misleading when you're doing something like houses that can cost millions of dollars. So maybe what I want to identify are companies that are smaller. I want to market to where those smaller single family home builders are. So we've seen the demographic characteristics here, but we can actually scroll down and look at industries. So I could say, hey, I just want to identify companies that have at most 10 employees. And then I can see the zip codes where there are those smaller home building companies, or I could modify that by revenue or other things. The tool will work in whatever manner you need it to do across whatever your spectrum of marketing objectives are. You just adjust the filters for your particular industry or the type of analysis you want to do, and then you're going to maximize each dollar spent on marketing on the advertising module. So I hope that was a helpful overview, and I'm going to turn this back over to Armando for a look at the final module, demographics, and then we will open this up to Q&A. Armando, over to you.
Thanks, Mario. Let me go ahead, and if you could give me a quick yes or no that you can see my screen.
Yes.
Awesome. So now we are in the demographics module. As Mario said, this is one of the most powerful modules that we have. The reason being is we allow you to look at 3 different report types in pretty much any way that you want. You can ask many questions and get many different perspectives on that question. So the 3 report types that we do are demographic overview, consumer expenditures, and labor force. So the ways that we allow you to search for that is the traditional way, if you're looking at your area type by city, county, or metro. And that is the one that's most familiar to people. So that's what we default to. And so let's take a look at this. For example, let's say hypothetically I am making baby clothes and I want to see where all the babies are. So we look at the age distribution, we toggle this on, and then we can see where the concentration is. And this is why it's an incredibly powerful tool, because we can see this by block group. We can not only see the total in these particular block groups, but we can see the concentration or the percentage of that total. So we can see that this area, if I'm doing baby clothes and I'm targeting 0 through 4-year-olds, I might want to look at this, right? Or maybe going back to the coffee shop example, one of the coffee shops in Austin, I know that they target those that have a college degree, because typically those people are most likely to get coffee. So that was one of his target markets. So if we do that here, we look at the bachelor's degree and we can see the total by concentration or just the total by block group. Now, if we wanted to, I don't know, if we were looking to recruit for our business, let's say we go to labor force, we can then go ahead and look at by the city, county, or metro, or even let's take it a different way. Maybe we want to look outside of these boundaries. Maybe we have something in mind. Maybe we want to be on a certain side of town, maybe have access a little bit longer along a particular freeway, or include something around a lake. However, we can create whatever type of shape that we want, and then we can go ahead and look by whichever report type, create, and then we can search that way. So if we were a coffee shop and we want to recruit other coffee workers, we might look at where all the restaurant employees or the restaurants in general, and we can see where the concentration is, and we can launch an advertising campaign to try and recruit those, or look at total employees by occupation, and then we can find the food preparation / serving, and we can see where the concentration is and the total amount is. So and then the final way that we allow you to search for these types of reports is around an address. So basically we put your business, your home base at the center of the world. So if we type in a random address, we can Now the map will be centered there. We can search by miles or by drive time minutes. So as the crow flies, or as far as the drive time it will take. So let's say we wanted to expand 15 miles out and then look at consumer expenditures that far out. You will get a customized polygon that shows how far you can make it outside in a 15-minute drive. And now we can go ahead and look at where the consumer expenditures are, what they what they look like. So if we wanted to look at food away from home, if we're still in the coffee shop example, we can go ahead and toggle this on and off, and then we can see where the concentration is there by total or by percentage. Now, one of the things that I do want to point out is that we do only allow you to toggle one item at a time. This is for privacy reasons. If you're able to filter by many different categories like this, for example, if you were looking for African American women who make over $1 billion, most likely you're going to be able to zone in on Oprah's house. So we want to protect Oprah's privacy. That is why we do that. So the demographics tool, you'll be able to get information about who lives and works in your area, and you'll be able to search spatially however you want for the 3 report types: demographics, consumers, and labor force. So that completes all 4 modules. Mario, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to you if you want to go through the final piece of the presentation about the data, and then we go into Q&A if there's more time.
Sure. Well, why don't we, just to respect everyone's time, who obviously have invested, hopefully to ask questions, why don't we just go to Q&A, and then we'll cover what we can at the end. We know that we have lots of recordings around data methodology and things like that that we can share with people offline if that's easier. So Terry, one, I just want to thank you all for attending, investing time to learn more about this tool. We really hope it's going to be valuable for you. It's just a quick review. The first module, obviously, is the business by benchmarking tool. It allows you to see how your business would be competing with industry competitors. The second is the competition tool ecosystem. Third, advertising to maximize each dollar spent. And then the fourth is the demographic tool. Deep analysis and whatever characteristic is most important to you, whether it be by political geography, drive time radius, or a custom boundary. What questions can we answer for all of you?
Anybody have any questions?
I have a question. Do I just shout it at you? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I know you said that the data was updated every 3 months. Is that a quarter in arrears from that? What's the delay or the as of?
Sure. So there's lots of different ways I could answer this question. We have hundreds of different data sets. So we will get to the data question because I'll share it with you now just so you can understand. So we tend to think of data as being in kind of specific buckets, if you will. And so the ones that you're probably going to be most interested in are the industry, demographic, and geographic data. So the industry data is updated quarterly, but that can come from multiple data partners depending on what industries that are being analyzed. As you know, like attorneys and CPAs have to pass certain exams. There are companies that are public that have to release their stock reports, earnings calls every quarter. So that while that information is updated quarterly, it might be anywhere from 3 months plus 6 to 9 months behind as businesses close, open, and things of that nature. But the information is updated quarterly. We are trying to create an automated process. We partner with the same data vendors that are used by Google Maps, Yelp, so on and so forth, to get that information updated more quickly. And then, of course, our data partners will also update that information with Google and other places. So that's specifically on the firmographic data, or the data about each individual business. All of the information from those businesses in terms of number of employees, revenue, that also is updated quarterly. But, leading, 3 to 9 months, depending on what's happening. It's just going to depend on the industry that you're in, as I mentioned. The demographic data that you saw is both current year and then 5-year projections. So these are all based off of the census, but again, they go through their own algorithms to determine what is most likely happening. That information is updated twice a year. So that's the demographic information, consumer expenditures, and the business and workforce information. Some of the information like workers' compensation, healthcare, turnover, that comes from a lot of government sources like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Census, the IRS. That is updated annually because that's as frequently as the government tends to update that information. And then the map display that you're seeing, we use Google Maps as the base layer, and then we put our data, our mashed up data on top of it. Google Maps updates frequently. The information is at the bottom of the map, so you can know how recent those aerials or anything else are. But it's a combination of hundreds of different data sources. Does that answer your question?
It does. Really quick follow-up. If we pull a report out of this system, will it say each piece of data as of 6 months ago, as of a year ago?
So it won't, because sometimes that data is a mashup of multiple data sets. So for instance, the advertising, if you're looking at underserved markets, you're looking at business revenue that's updated every quarter, along with consumer expenditure data that's updated every 6 months. What we do is we provide those updates to Terry and the team. So make sure you subscribe to newsletters or their newsletters, so that as we push that information out, they can also share that with you. We do have white papers. So, if you want to put it someplace and then link out, then, you can look at the methodology and talk to far better and smarter people than I am about how data gets managed.
Thank you.
Sure.
Does the number of employees category, can you differentiate full-time versus part-time?
So not currently, that's FTE. So, if you had 10, I'm choosing a round number, that may be 5 full-time and 10 half-time. We are working, so one of the things that you might have seen, we continue to add new data sets as soon as we can. So one of the things that you're seeing now on the competition tool is you click on an individual business, you can see if it might be minority owned or might be woman owned. In case you're trying to work with a woman owned business, you could then see it. We say might because these aren't certified businesses, but we're working with the SBA to get that information so we could find veteran owned businesses or certified minority owned business or so on and so forth. So we continue to add those things. As soon as we have those updates, we let our clients know, and then they can push that out to you. But at this time, it is just a full-time equivalent.
Yeah, so if you've got a part-timer or 2 part-timers that work 20 hours, that's 1 FTE.
Okay. Sorry, I have a couple others, just curious if they're options. New to the area or new to Colorado, can you filter out people that have moved into the area in the last year?
So we don't have any what it's called PI or personally identifiable information on the tool. We aggregate down to what I would call the neighborhood level that a statistician would call a census block group area. So we don't have that type of information where like this household came. Could you buy that from data vendors? Absolutely, you could. We see our tool as a starting place for that. And then if you wanted to go out to the Dun and Bradstreet's, Data Axle's, Info USA's, Experian, changing and Equifax, you certainly could do that. But that's not the intent of our tool.
It could point us to the neighborhoods that are.
It could, or the zip code level, or the county, right? Because as you zoom in and out on the map, it will change the heat map or the data associated with it. So whatever level you want to get to, the tool can help you with that. And then you could go follow up with any other sources. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Great question. Thank you.
I have a question. So I'm part of a nonprofit, so I'm looking at things from a different lens. I'm looking at it as where are the people that we need to serve? And so I was wondering, do you have any sort of filters for like bilingual households or ESL? Also, like philanthropic information about people that donate, and also transportation. So those were my 3 things.
Sure. So that is a pretty big question, but I'll try to answer it the best way that I can in the time allotted. So that is not the original intent of our tool, but I just met with some nonprofits yesterday. And so the answer is I think you can get to some of that information via our tool. It would be not necessarily directly what you're looking for, but adjacent to it. And so what I mean by that is, let's say that you are serving a certain group of people. Maybe you're serving kids. You could look at the percentage of kids there if you're focused on a specific income group. So maybe you're looking for areas where people are making 20 to 30,000. You can actually see the number of households, or you can look at the overall percentage. And so you can do the same thing with education, size of household, if you're trying to say, look, servicing families as opposed to individual people, or you could of course look at, let's say you're trying to service African-American communities, you can see where the highest percentage of those are. So I think the demographic tool would be what you'd want to look at. You know, in terms of donors, I think you might look at the labor force report and say, hey, where are the big companies? If that's what you see as your, you know, your donors, you could identify where they are. Or you could say, hey, specifically, I'm looking for heavy construction companies, and I want to see where those are located, and you could identify the type of corporations that endow your, you know, your particular nonprofit. So there's ways to get close to it, but not multivariable analysis in our tool.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Is there a way to find your own business on the map?
Sure. So you can actually search for your business on the competition tool. So you can add, well, here, I'll go ahead and show it to you. So let's go back to, and I think this is a good example. We'll go back to coffee shop. So we're showing all the coffee shops right now. But as you know, more than just coffee shops sell coffee. So you could add in diners or, you know, cafes, so on and so forth. And now you've added in all of those categories, so you can see all of those businesses. But if there's a specific one that you're looking for, and I'm just making this up, but let's say it's Coffee Craze or Coffee Clatch or Coffee Dave, you can actually just search for the name of the business, and then you'll get a match, even if that business, in this case, is outside of the area. So Coffee and Bagels is down here in Broomfield, Colorado. So you get the idea. You can just search for your name or the name of the business that you want to compare yourself to or investigate their location.
I have a question. So on the advertising, it kind of gives you kind of a broad area of who comes from what area. Can you use this tool to target, how do I say this, certain types of advertising tools to be able to market to those people? Like, let's say this neighborhood, they get a magazine, and this neighborhood is always on Facebook, or they're like, you know what I mean? So how do you choose what type of advertising option to be able to market to those people that you're looking to?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'm going to sound like a broken record. As we add new features, we let people know. I can say that we're working on something similar to that, not exactly what you're talking about, but rather looking at it from an industry perspective. So let's say if you're an attorney, you say, hey, most advertising for that industry happens on LinkedIn, as opposed to women's clothing, which might be on Facebook or Instagram. So maybe not so much consumer specific variables, but rather industry specific information. In terms of, you know, which neighborhoods you want to market to, obviously having content expertise within your industry is helpful. But if you know that there are certain, you know, income levels or genders, age groups, education levels that are interested, then you can approach that with a demographic tool to do that. And let's say you were selling like construction equipment, you could actually map where the construction companies and the construction workers are, and then you could target them that way. I hope that answered that question. Any others? But you guys are gonna make me think that I'm far smarter than I am, because I'm sure there's
It was a
some.
lot fast. I think people need to play with it. I think what needs to happen is everyone is eager to go play and dink around and find your industry. It looks pretty self-explanatory. Can you show where the help videos are again?
Sure. So we have what are called context-sensitive help videos for each module. So when you click on your module, you're going to see that this little I button pops up here, and you'll notice that we do it in line. So you can play the video and then go ahead and make those same modifications as you kind of watch along.
So it's like,
So this is the My Business tool. You can see for competition, it's a separate video, advertising, separate video. So each one has its own context specific video that can just walk you through that really quickly. The way that you're gonna learn the best is just go ahead and play with it. Remember, this is 100% free to you. There's no cost per search, so you can play around as much as you want.